let's begin. So I just want to say hello to everyone and welcome to our webinar to tackle why self-promotion is crucial yet often feels awkward for female professionals. I'm Penny Parker, I'm a director at Taylor Root, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here today. Thank you all so much for joining. I think we've had over 150 registrations for today, which is absolutely incredible and clearly highlights that this topic is something that many people really resonate with. So the theme of today's webinar is Know Your Worth, effective and authentic self-promotion. The format of today's website will be a coaching session, which has been developed and will be led by Pascal, career and business growth coach, who I will intro in more detail in a second. We will have time for questions at the end, but if I could just ask you all to use the Q&A box to include any questions you might have for Pascal or myself. So it is a great pleasure to introduce today's host and career coach for today's session, Pascal Lebelif. Pascal wears a lot of hats. She's a career and business growth coach. She's also a partner of and the COO of Sustain, an investment firm focused on renewable energy. With over 20 years of experience in finance and law, Pascal has held senior roles in big name companies like Morgan Stanley, Credit Suisse, and JP Morgan. She's led business development, driven major growth, and successfully managed global teams. On top of that, she served on talent and promotion committees, advisory boards, and strategic committees, giving her deep insight into what it takes to succeed at the highest levels. In her coaching practice, Pascal brings all that corporate experience and combines it with her coaching expertise to help women navigate the challenges of the corporate world. She's passionate about helping her clients build tailored strategies to get them moving toward their goals and unlocking their full potential, but always in a way that's aligned with their own values. Before we dive into today's topic on effective self-promotion, I wanted to highlight an exciting initiative Pascal has coming up next month. So she's launching the Female Leaders Mastermind program. It's a 4-month journey designed to help women elevate their careers through weekly coaching and guest speakers. Topics include effective presence, growth mindset, stress management, and more. I will share Pascal's details after the webinar, and if you're interested in learning more, feel free to contact her directly. I'm sure you'll all agree we are in excellent hands for today's important discussion. So a massive warm welcome to Pascal. Thank you so much for your time and for tailoring this session specifically for our audience.
Thank you, Penny. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm very excited to dive into the important topic of self-promotion. I want to help you understand why we're struggling with it, why sharing our achievements and successes is nowadays more important than ever before. And then finally, I want to give you strategies on how to communicate your value with authenticity and in a way that aligns with your values.
That's amazing.
And those strategies are going to be strategies you can implement straight away.
Amazing. Thank you. I think that's why we're all here today, Pascal. So we thought before we kick off the session, we'd start with a poll just to get a temperature check of our audience. So if we launch that poll, hopefully that's now live. Yes. So the question is, what makes you feel most awkward about promoting yourself in the workplace or on professional platforms? So probably just give that, 20, 30 seconds just to everyone could cast their vote. Perfect. I mean, unsurprising. I actually posted a similar question on a LinkedIn poll recently, and yeah, it very much was sort of unsure of achievements, that lack of confidence and afraid of being perceived as arrogant. So yeah, but unsurprisingly, they were the top ones. So with that in mind, over to you, Pascal.
Thanks, Penny. So let me start with why we struggle with self-promotion. It's quite important to identify the reasons because then we can tackle them. Why we struggle with self-promotion? The first reason is because we're overthinking it. We worry a lot about coming off as bragging or fear being judged or putting ourselves out there. This constant second guessing makes us question our value and our accomplishments. Or we don't even mention them. For women in corporate settings, it's easy to fall into the trap, wanting to fit or avoid seeming too bold. We're victims of the good girl syndrome. But staying quiet about our wins can really hold us back on the long term. So how does this look in practice? Let me give you an example. The perfect moment comes to talk about one of your achievements to your manager or in a meeting. But you start questioning every word choice in your head. You're like, shall I say, thanks to my work, we increased client satisfaction by 28%? Or wouldn't it be better if I said, my team and I implemented this new process whereby we increased client satisfaction by 28%? Is that going to sound too awkward? And before you know it, you've missed the chance to let people know how your work has had a positive impact on the business. Another reason why people struggle with self-promotion is because they're people pleasers. And this one resonates with women particularly. People pleasers have a strong desire to make others feel comfortable. They don't want to make other people feel inferior, left out, or bad. They think that sharing their wins is being self-centered. But in trying to keep everyone happy and avoid rocking the boat, they end up downplaying or even hiding their wins. What they do is that they sacrifice their own visibility to maintain harmony. Can we move on to the next slide, please? And thank you. And then the third one. The third one is, as you know, lots of you said, like 46%, I think, fear of judgment or rejection. You want to say something in a meeting, but you worry about how others will perceive you. You fear that you'll be seen as arrogant or boastful, and that can lead you feeling insecure. The thought of being rejected or criticized for simply owning your successes makes it easier to stay quiet about them rather than stand out. And for women in the corporate environment, this fear is even stronger, since we're often pressured by society to stay humble and not draw too much attention to ourselves. But when fear dictates our actions, we miss opportunities to showcase our worth and gain the recognition we deserve. Now, the fourth reason why we struggle with self-promotion is anxiety. You may feel a rush of anxiety when thinking about sharing your achievements, for example, during a year-end review, and it may lead you to downplay your achievements or divert the conversation to something different altogether. You want to avoid feeling exposed or vulnerable. This means for a lot of people shrinking ourselves to avoid standing out too much, even when we've earned the right to be proud. There's another reason why we feel anxious, and that came up on the poll just now. We may also feel anxious because we don't even know where to start. We don't even know what our achievements are. Sometimes we're so busy with the day-to-day grind that we don't stop to think about what we've actually accomplished. So this makes it tough to talk about your value because you're not sure where to start and what to focus on. Now, we've seen the 4 reasons why people struggle with self-promotion. They either overthink it and miss the opportunity to showcase their achievements. They're people pleasers, so they don't want other people to feel left out or inferior. They fear judgment and rejection, or they get anxious. Anxious because they don't know how to phrase it, or anxious because they don't even know what their achievements are. Before we move on to the next session, I'd like to suggest a poll here. And I'd like to know, and it's going to come up on your screens any second now. I'd like to know what stops you from sharing your value and achievements. Which of these resonate with you the most? I'm sure it's more than one, but which one is it that is holding you back, really? I'll give you like 20, 30 seconds to answer, and then we'll see the results together. Overthinking it is the first one. Okay, very interesting. And then we have fear of judgment and anxiety, less of people pleasers. Okay, great. Well, you'll see the strategies I'll give you later on. They're going to help you with those struggles. Because I want you to know that it's possible to navigate these challenges. The thing is, what we see out there is often about being big-headed and stepping all over other people. And we don't like it. But it doesn't have to be like that. You can approach it in a way that aligns with your values and feels authentic. With the right tools, you can understand how you can stand up for yourself and that it doesn't equate to letting other people down. You can overcome the fear of being judged and rejected by realizing that criticism is often about the critic, not you. Let me repeat that. Criticism is often about the critic, not you. So if you share your accomplishments, your expertise, your value in a way that is not boastful, in a way that is based on facts, and someone criticizes you, just remember, this says more about them than you. Self-promotion doesn't have to be loud, aggressive, or arrogant to be effective. But before we move on to the strategies, which are going to help you to talk about your achievements in a natural way, I'd like to discuss a little bit why self-promotion is a vital part of your career success. And again, it's important to understand because once you're conscious about it, you will be driven to take action. So why is it a vital part for your career success? First of all, because work has changed. Let me see. Amazing. Thank you for the slides. Before COVID and lockdowns, organic interactions in the office, such as coffee breaks, hallway chats, interaction with your colleagues before and after meetings, demonstrated your value. They were incredibly important because they communicated your hard work, your critical thinking, your dedication, your work ethic, without you having to talk about them. Now, in a hybrid environment with remote work, there is less visual demonstration. Instead, everything is scheduled, all the meetings, one-to-ones, team meetings, etc. So in this environment, the only person who sees your value is you. It is easy for your hard work to go unnoticed unless you make a conscious effort to share it. Also remember that your manager juggles their own workload and they have their own challenges. They may not always have a clear view of what everyone is achieving every single day. Out of sight, out of mind, as the saying goes. And this is not only about your manager, but also about your colleagues. So self-promotion has become, in this hybrid environment, a necessary skill. It's about communicating your accomplishments to keep that professional presence. The other reason self-promotion is very important is because it helps you own your narrative. With self-promotion, you can tell an intentional story about your values, your expertise, your accomplishments, and what you can deliver on. But it's not just about that. You can also tell a story about where you want to go. The more you tell it, the more people start to connect with where you're headed. You give people a more complete view of who you are and what you can achieve. So self-promotion is not only about telling people where you are now, but also telling them where you're headed. it's not just about showcasing what you've accomplished so far. It's also about showcasing where you want to be next. Be open about your goals, your vision about the future. Your manager and other colleagues will know how you want to evolve in your career, and they'll think of you when the right opportunity comes. Let me maybe give you an example to illustrate this. In a performance review or a chat with your manager, you could say something like this. I'm happy with the role I played in helping our team improve efficiency by 20% on the last project. I really enjoy working on projects that not only deliver results, but also enhance team collaboration. So moving forward, I'm interested in exploring more leadership opportunities, especially in strategy. This way, you're not just talking about your wins, but also making it clear where you want to grow. The third reason why self-promotion is so vital, it's because it opens doors for new opportunities. By communicating your value, people are more likely to think of you when the opportunity arises. By showcasing your skills, your expertise, you position yourself as the go-to person. You invite more collaboration. But remember, it's important that your actions align with the values you're showcasing. When they do, people are not only clear on what those are, but they can trust that you will deliver on them. Talk the talk and walk the walk. The fourth reason why self-promotion is critical, it's because it boosts your confidence. When you start articulating your successes, you reinforce your self-worth. You start to internalize that you have something to offer. You do bring value to the table. I want you to remember the last time you achieved something and allowed yourself to fully own it and acknowledge it. Can you remember one time that you did that? How did that feel? Was it empowering? Exciting? Did it give you a sense of optimism and energy? I'm sure it did. So self-promotion gives you a self-boost. It helps you see your own value and your confidence continues to build. Now, we just saw 4 reasons why self-promotion is important. Because work has changed, and in this hybrid environment, it's even more important that you showcase your achievements. Otherwise, people won't see them. It helps you own your own narrative. You tell an intentional story about what you achieved, what you want to showcase, which expertise and skills you want to showcase, and where you're headed. It obviously opens doors for new opportunities. And if you align your actions with what you say, then people will naturally think of you when the right opportunity comes. And finally, it boosts your confidence. The more you identify and articulate your achievements, the more you will feel confident about them and your worth. Before we move on to the final section with some tips and strategies about how you can, self-promote yourself in an authentic way, let's do another poll. And what I want to know now is which of these reasons is strong enough to make you embrace self-promotion going forward. I don't want you just to sit here and listen to me and then forget all about it. It's really important that you embrace it. Which of these reasons is going to push you do it? Is it hybrid work? Is it that you want to own your narrative going forward? Do you want to open doors for new opportunities? Or do you need that boost in self-confidence? I'll give you a few seconds to vote and then we'll discover together the results. Opening doors for new opportunities. is by far the most important one, okay? And second is owning your narrative. They do go hand in hand. If you're intentional about your narrative, you will for sure open new doors, new opportunities for yourself. Okay, now let's move on to how you can communicate your achievements and values. I'll give you 4 strategies. There are a few more, but I don't think we'll have the time today. Let's focus on 4. And I would love you to embrace and start implementing one of them today. The first one is simply to assess and reflect on your successes on a regular basis, so you're ready to share them when the right opportunity comes. For those of you who answered the first poll, that you weren't sure of what your achievements were, this is a great way to start identifying them. Be ready to communicate on your achievements in team meetings, one-to-ones, in the lift, when you meet a senior manager, etc. Have that in your mind already. To do that, you need to take a little bit of time on a regular basis and reflect on your successes. How can you do that? I'll give you a list of examples, and I'll be slow, so you can write them down if you wish so. Ask yourself, what have I accomplished lately? How do I contribute to the success of my team or the business? Is it measurable? If it is, you want to mention it. What was the biggest lesson from each of these accomplishments? What are you most proud of at the end of a project? What do you do every day that makes you feel you've done a good job? Identify your impact and say why you're proud of the work you've done. Let me read those questions again. What have you accomplished lately? How did you contribute to the success of your team or the business? Is it measurable? What was the biggest lesson from each of your accomplishments? What are you most proud of at the end of a project? What do you do every day that makes you feel you've done a good job? So back to what I said at the beginning, for those who are unsure about their accomplishments, this is where you start. You ask yourself those questions. And if you still struggle, because we tend to be harsher on ourselves than others, look at what you did the last couple of weeks or the last month, and look at them as if someone else had done that work, had achieved those successes and wins. A friend, and say, say my best friend is Maria. Maria managed to do this, and she finalized this project ahead of the deadline, and everyone was very happy about it. List all this, and then think whether you'd be proud of your friend for achieving what they achieved. If yes, then that is an achievement. And that's a trick, just because very often we're harsher on ourselves than other people. So if we downplay what we achieve and our wins, but if we see the same thing, so if we see someone else doing the same thing, we'll be like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Well done. You should be proud of yourself. The second strategy I'm going to give you now, and it's quite a powerful one. It's very simple, but yet very powerful. Embrace updates. Do you send updates to your manager and stakeholders on a regular basis? If no, start now. A few years back, when I was still at my corporate job, I was really frustrated because my manager didn't seem to know everything that I had on my plate, everything that I was achieving, and all my challenges. And for some reason, at some point, the penny dropped. And I started sending her weekly emails with my achievements, but also with my challenges. Just bullet points. And I can tell you that she really appreciated it, because I was finally giving her the information she needed to support me and help me drive my career in the right direction. Then, as a manager myself, I asked the members of my team to do the same. I was managing 2 global teams, people sitting in New York, London, and Asia. There was no way I could know everyone's achievements on every single day. So their weekly emails helped me tremendously. I knew what they had achieved, how they had done it, and where they had challenges. And remember that a big part of a manager's job is to navigate office politics. And with that information in hand, I was never caught by surprise. I had everything I needed to defend my team and provide with an explanation based on facts to my own manager and my stakeholders if something didn't go well. Also, as a manager, knowing about each individual's achievements, I had a clear picture of their strengths. So I could therefore assign them to the right piece of work, one that would also be aligned with their aspirations. Now, finally, during lockdown, I did the same with my stakeholders. I asked each of them what they wanted to be updated on, and my team started putting together monthly newsletters with metrics and KPIs that track progress on the most important projects. We even had a last part about achievements outside of work, so we can keep that human connection with our colleagues since we couldn't see them face to face in the office. And it was very welcomed. All our colleagues and stakeholders loved seeing those emails. So remember to send updates to your manager and to your stakeholders as a minimum. The third strategy you can implement, and that one is particularly good for those who feel anxious, is to plan your contribution. You can beat anxiety by preparing your contribution ahead of a meeting. Instead of having to think on the spot, what you do is that you check the agenda ahead of time, identify where you can bring value and showcase your skills and expertise, and then let the organizer know that you want to intervene at a certain point of time and make a contribution. That way, it's planned, you have time to prepare what you want to say, which is going to help you manage your anxiety. Better yet, the organizer calling on you during a meeting, it naturally positions you as an expert on the topic. It gives more weight to your contribution. So instead of going to a meeting, waiting for the right moment to contribute, and then feeling too anxious to do it, check the agenda, prepare ahead of time, talk to the organizer, tell them when you want to contribute, and you'll see that is going to go a long way. And it's going to make it easier for you to showcase your expertise and your skills. The fourth one now, it's about finding people who will advocate for you. Having people who advocate for you is a great way to promote yourself without feeling like you're bragging. When others speak up about your work and your achievements, it boosts your credibility and lets your impact speak for itself. To find these allies, you need to build strong relationships with peers, mentors, sponsors, senior managers, people who know what you're capable of. Show them you're reliable and great at what you do, and they'll naturally start talking you up. This ties in perfectly with Jeff Bezos' quote, "Your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. Your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room." What people say about you matters just as much. Having others advocate for you makes sure your reputation reflects your real value. And you know how you can build strong relationship with people? You reciprocate. You do the same, especially for your peers. The one who support you and advocate for you, you do the same for them, and you help each other. So now that we've seen the 4 strategies you can use, and those are very practical, you can start implementing them straight away. I want you to tell me now, and a poll is going to pop up on your screen. I want you to tell me which of these strategies you commit to start implementing right after the webinar. You want to start assessing and reflecting on your successes so you can identify them and be able to talk about them. You want to start embracing updates and send updates to your manager and stakeholders. Are you going to plan your contribution ahead of meetings, or are you going to think about who can advocate for you? Hopefully you'll try more than one, but the one I want you to commit today to start implementing, which one is going to be that one? Let me know on the poll. Oh, wow. Okay. So the very first step, assessing and reflecting on your successes, it comes by far first. And that's totally normal, right? Because this is the first step. Before you can do everything else, you need to identify and know what your successes are. So do that right after this webinar. Go in your calendar, put a 30-minute regular slot on your calendar, be it every week, every other week, and take that time without distraction to think about your achievements. And if you know that you tend to downplay those achievements when they're yours, look at them as if someone else had achieved them and see if you would be proud of them if they did. And if you would, then it's an achievement. Okay, fantastic. So we're coming to the end, which is great because it will give us time for Q&A. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. To wrap things up, I want to say that authentic self-promotion is really just about identifying, owning your achievements, and communicating them at the right time and based on facts. And first of all, stop the self-deprecating talk. The language you use is key. So be careful not to downplay your contributions. Instead of using qualifiers such as just, I think, try saying, from my perspective, or based on my experience, to show confidence in what you bring to the table. And when someone gives you a compliment, simply accept it. Don't undermine your work. A simple thank you, I'm glad you noticed, goes a long way. Making these small shifts will help you confidently share your value, stand out, and take control of your career. And on the last slide here, you'll see what I'm trying to do here. You're telling me I want to do this, and I say, do it. And you're telling me, but I'm scared. Well, do it scared. You have to take action. If you don't take action, nothing will change. Start implementing the strategies, see how it goes, see where you need to improve, and continue to do that. Think about what you're doing, what can be done better, and continue with that. And again, if you fear being judged or criticized, just remember that more often than not, it's about the critic, not about you. that was it, Penny. Can we
That's
put on the
great.
last slide? And there you can find all my contact details before, we can leave it there and we can look at the questions we have in the Q&A box. If you want to find out more about me, you can go on my website, maximumpotentialcareers.com. There's a QR code there you can scan with your phone. You can see there my email addresses, my phone, and obviously you can find me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions or you want to share thoughts about this webinar, feel free to contact me through email or via LinkedIn.
That's great. Thank you, Pascal. And as I mentioned, I will also be sharing your details with the follow-up once I send out the recording, etc. So we have got some questions actually, but just one point I wanted to make, or a takeaway for me, is what I thought was really interesting is you saying, sort of looking at the work that you've done through the eyes of a friend or a colleague, and basically, assessing whether or not that's something that they should be proud of. I just think for me, I think that's a really good way of taking the arrogance out of it, because you're not then going, oh, well, I'm talking myself up, or I'm telling everyone how great I am. Because actually, if it were anyone else, I would genuinely congratulate them, or I would, as you say, be proud of them. So that's the takeaway for me. Thanks so much. I wrote that one down. So in terms of questions, we've had a few actually. Shall I just sort of throw them at you and you can answer them? Yeah. So one of the questions, and actually this one came through worded slightly differently, but there was definitely a theme of, how do you deal with imposter syndrome when you're self-promoting yourself at work?
Imposter syndrome, I think it ties back to the fear of being judged and rejected. You need to take action. And the first step is to sit down and identify your achievements. You identify those achievements and you get into the habit of doing that. Once you've done that, you start articulating them, for example, with a weekly update to your manager. It's based on facts. Remember that what you're saying or what you're sharing with other people is based on fact. If you manage to increase client satisfaction by 28%, well, this is fact. It's not being arrogant or anything. And don't overthink it. You know what? One day you are going to, it's likely that you come across as arrogant, but the message will get across. If you can think of someone who's very arrogant and talks about themselves all the time and say, I did this and I did that, you do feel like, oh, I don't like this person, or I don't like the way he or she is doing it. But do you remember what they told you? Yes, you do. Do you remember the value and the expertise they were communicating? Yes, you do. And that's the most important part of it. You communicate what you've achieved simply based on facts, and you don't worry about how you come across. Chances are it's going to be perfectly fine. And if one day someone, criticizes you, to be honest, it's more about them than about you.
Yeah, great. And actually, further to that, there's a couple more questions around sort of the updates or sharing updates. One of them is, do you have any tips on keeping your own record format or logging own achievements that you can raise them at appraisal, future opportunities? So how do you go about keeping a log, I guess, or keeping track of them?
That's a very good question. Very good question. So what I used to do is I had an Excel spreadsheet, as simple as that. And I would just track on my spreadsheet all the projects and, the progress and the challenges there. And at the end of the year, and that's very useful as well when the time comes for year-end reviews. You have everything. You don't remember just the last few months, but the whole year is there, and you can really see what were your greatest achievements throughout the year.
Great idea. The question actually, I will ask this one actually because it's sort of related to that, but what do you do if your manager ignores your updates and things do go wrong? So maybe you don't have someone who's as open to having those regular catch-ups, or it's harder to be in the room with them or on a meeting with them or whatever, where you can communicate those achievements. What would you do then, Pascal?
I would suggest two things. I would suggest to keep sending those updates because they're being seen, even if the manager doesn't read all of them, they'll see some of them, unless they tell you not to do it, in which case I would question why. And the other thing is, that's why it's really important to build a network at work and not rely only on your manager to drive the career you want. You need to have a good support network of peers. You need to have some mentors, ideally a sponsor, and be connected with senior managers in the organization. And there are ways of doing that. Again, I know it's one of the things that can feel awkward. And I certainly felt awkward when I started networking, sending an email saying, hey, can we grab coffee? And thinking why this person would spend time with me. But the reality is that people do. And it's often two ways. You get something from them, but you also give them something. And it's like a win-win situation. So it's really important to develop that network within the organization and outside of the organization. So you build that reputation and you don't rely just on your manager to have a successful career.
There's two more questions on that, I guess, in terms of the relationship management side with stakeholders and also with the manager. So maybe I'll ask the manager question first, then we can talk about stakeholders. But someone's asked that they have a feeling that when they try to promote their own successes to their manager internally, there's almost like a conflict there, and perhaps the manager feels like they're trying to upstage them. Do you have an advice on this situation? So how would you go about managing that potential conflict, or managing up, really, isn't it?
That touches upon another of the topics I work on, is managing upwards. It's very important to manage upwards. And when you have a manager who feels threatened, it's quite important to make them feel safe. So, on a regular basis, remind them in the nicest possible way that you're not there to take their jobs, but on the contrary, you're there to help them do a better job. Anything they need, you're there. Don't be someone who comes with problems all the time. Be the person who comes with solutions. And show them that they can trust you and rely on you. Once that fear goes away, they will be your best advocate.
Amazing. And in building relationships with stakeholders, we learn a lot about showing vulnerability to build trust. How do you balance vulnerability and self-promotion in the right way?
Okay, I'm not showing vulnerability. I think it needs to be done intentionally in the working environment. I don't agree that just by showing vulnerability, everything goes well. It's not true. The workplace is, a very tough environment. There are office politics, and some people may take advantage of that. So when you show vulnerability, make sure you've thought about it and it's intentional, not something that comes up on the spot, because it might harm you. Yeah, that's what I would say about that. Be careful about it.
Thank you. And then one last question, which is, actually, there's two more questions, but one is, I guess we've sort of answered this, but this keeps coming up, which is that sort of the balance between confidence and arrogance. But I think you've kind of touched on a few sort of strategies around there. I mean, another question is, what are some...
Sorry, just to go back to that one.
Yeah, please.
The balance is to stick to the facts. Stick to the facts. If you go in a room and say, oh, how amazing I am because I did such a fantastic job, obviously, you hear me, you're like, oh, she's so arrogant. If when the right moment comes and people say, oh, look, I'm going back to that client satisfaction example. Client satisfaction improved. You can say, oh, thank you. I'm glad you noticed that, because my team and I put a lot of hard work in it. I'm really happy that it had such a positive impact on the business. That's just fact.
Yeah, absolutely. And then should we take a last question, which is, gosh, there's a few here. Bear with me.
We have 5 minutes, so yeah, we can take
it. Oh, perfect. So what are some ways to highlight my skills and contributions in a job interview without coming off as arrogant or overconfident? And actually, I think you kind of just answered that, because I don't see, for me, and I hope you don't mind me butting in here, but just as the recruiter on the call, but on the session, but I kind of think they're the same, right? I think it is still listing those facts, achievements that you've done. And also, one thing I would say, as a recruiter who's interviews people, all the time, I find so often women say, we did this, we did that, referring to what the team's achievements were, or the firm's achievements, or whatever it might be. And my advice is always, what did you do? Tell me firsthand, what was your involvement? I did this, or I was part of this, but as part of the team, my involvement got us to this, whatever it might be. But would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. What you're saying is really interesting, right? From your point of view, it's perfect for people who wonder how to handle interviews. I 100% agree. And you're there to listen to them. You want to hear about those accomplishments, right? So you can see if they fit to the role that's available or a different role. So I'd say to people, don't be afraid of listing your achievements. That's exactly the forum where you should be telling about those achievements.
I agree. I agree. And don't feel bad about it because, as you say, it's factual, right? I think that's
Yes.
also a big takeaway for me today, for sure. And then there is one last question. We're sort of jumping, between the themes. But someone's asked, "What do I do if my manager isn't championing my achievements to the business when I share them?" So you kind of talked about earlier. You were saying always have them in the back of your mind. So even if you're getting into the lift with a senior manager, you're able to. I mean, in an organic way, right? You don't just want to be like, "Oh, guess what I did last week," but with that, I mean, is that your
Yeah.
kind of advice on how to overcome that if someone is being a bit of a blocker?
Yes. So make sure that you can articulate in a couple of sentences what you've achieved. You're in the lift with a senior manager who knows you. Someone who, for example, works in New York and they are visiting London, and they're like, "Oh, hi, Pascal, how are you? What are you? What have you been up to lately?" If you say, "Well, all good, busy, busy," you've just missed such a great opportunity to
Right.
talk about what it is that you're doing. You can tell, "Oh, we're working on this regulatory project, and it's been amazing because we managed to sign X amount of agreements." Something like that, as simple as that. And the other thing I would say is, again, don't rely only on your manager. If your manager is not championing you to your stakeholders, have regular meetings with the stakeholders. It's not going to feel awkward or anything. It's not like a plus one, right? You go and see the stakeholders. Even if it's not like a planned, the days you're in the office, if you can manage to, if they're there as well, this is also the challenges with the hybrid environment. Pop over, have a quick chat, give them an update. Updating people is so important, really important. I was talking to one of my clients, and because she didn't have all the information she needed, she was not giving an update to a senior manager who had asked her to do something. That is going to go so wrong. Keep the dialogue. You tell them what you're doing, bullet points, don't put too much. People don't have time to read emails, but keep sending those emails. You might think that they are not reading them, but they actually are.
And would you say, actually, just on that note, because a lot of people are hybrid, and actually, when different teams or stakeholders do different team days or whatever it is, there, it might be that actually you're only bumping into people once or twice a month. With the networking piece, do you do it in the same way? Because it's so much easier, isn't it, to just say, "Can we grab a coffee?" or bump into someone in the kitchen, grabbing a cup of tea or whatever. How do you go about networking? When you aren't necessarily seeing people face to face?
Yeah. So what I used to do is use the days I was in the office to see people.
Right.
Honestly, I was not doing much work on those days. I was prioritizing meeting with people, grabbing coffees, walking around the office and having a chat about a project we were working on, or talent promotion, etc. And then do the work when I was at home. That would be a good tip. The other one is I schedule lots and lots of 15 minutes meetings, catch-ups with an agenda so that I wasn't wasting people's time, but 15 minutes to say, "I want to update you on 1, 2, 3, 4, or I need you or your team to provide me with this information." And of course, before you get there, you're like, "How are you? How are your kids?" And you keep that human connection even through Zoom.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. So I think we'll probably wrap things up if that's okay. I just want to say a really big thank you to Pascal for sharing your valuable insights, experience, and honesty with us today, and actually for really giving us some practical tools and techniques that we can all take and incorporate into our daily lives to help us self-promote authentically and with confidence. I think that's the key, isn't it? And I also wanted to send out a huge thank you to everyone who joined the call today and being part of this empowering conversation. I am going to follow up with the recording of this webinar to everyone who joined shortly. I think you'll also get a link to a survey where we just ask if your feedback on the webinar. It's always super helpful for us. And if you want to find more information on Pascale and her coaching practice, I will share LinkedIn and the QR code and her details, etc. So you can get in contact directly. But thank you so much, Pascale. That was really great. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this very important topic. And thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of day. Take care.
Bye.